Hi everybody, welcome to this this question and answer session on early years teacher training. I'm Phil. Most of you probably had an email from me, or you might have had one from my colleagues Charlotte and Victoria. But yeah, just the main thing was to invite you to this session, which is all about our early years teacher training program. I'm joined by Gill. She's actually not got a camera on at the moment. She's having one or two technical problems with her laptop, I think, but she's here with me, and she's here to basically answer any questions that you might have about our teacher training, the program, the curriculum, enrolment, or just about anything else you can think of. So yeah, hopefully you can hear me, Gill.
Yes, I certainly can, Phil. Thank you very much. I'm sorry that I can't be visually attending the drop-in, but I'm certainly here to answer as many questions as possible, and welcome to everybody.
Thanks, Gill. So I think the first thing I'll sort of let everyone know is that this isn't a presentation as such. Obviously, you can see we've got a PowerPoint slide on the screen now, but I mean, we really want to keep it quite informal and just be online here for the next 45 minutes to answer some questions. So we've got some visual aids in the PowerPoint slides, which I can refer back to, and which will give you some more information. I'm happy to email those after the presentation or after this session. But what I would do really is invite you to use the chat in this call, and just put your questions up onto the chat, and I'll read those, and I'll read those and put them to Gill as they come through. So yeah, by all means, if anyone wants to put a question up, we'll be ready to answer it. We have got one or two more people just coming in through the lobby as well, so I'm letting them in. Thanks. My colleague Abby Smith is in the call as well. She just noted that she's works with us on our admissions for the early years teacher training program. So some of you may have spoken with her already. So we'll wait for the first question to come in. Some of you may have already joined us for our webinar, but we've got some of the key points through the slides that I'll refer to through the presentation or through the session. And yeah, as I say, it runs through some of the key points. So Gill, we've got the first question. Thanks, Anna. So the question there is, what are the expectations for a mentor?
Great question. Thank you, Anna. What I would say is that when you come onto the programme, we do ask that somebody in the setting is going to take the role of mentor. And the mentor is somebody who works with you day to day, supports you, and is usually somebody who is pretty accessible to you during the time that you're on the programme. So either within the same room or possibly in a different room in the setting. And we ask that they are able to observe you on a regular basis. It says in the description that we ask you to have a weekly observation. Now that's definitely something that we would like to happen, but we're very aware that in settings, children don't necessarily sit still when you want them to, and it's difficult to observe them in a planned way. So we're happy with the observations in the moment. We're happy with people discussing how they're teaching, but it's somebody who can be a colleague to support you during the programme. They'll obviously meet up with the visiting tutor, who comes 5 times a year during the time you're on the programme, and they together will be setting your targets and thinking about your next steps. And so that, alongside the observations that they do day to day with you and meeting with you to discuss things, is the role of the mentor. Does that answer your question, or was there something further? Oh, good. Thank you, Anna.
I think one question I know I've seen emailed or asked is how much time a mentor has to commit to supporting a trainee throughout the year as well. Gill, is that something that, I know there's probably not a prescribed amount, but do you think you could give us an idea of that?
Yes, of course. You're right, Phil. There is no prescribed amount, and we're not expecting people to have to commit hours and hours of extra time. What we are asking them to do is to be available during the observation times, but most often you'll find in settings people meet up for coffee or to have lunch together, and there's no reason why the two of you couldn't get together in one of those times to have a chat about how things are going. We do talk about formal meetings that happen once a week, but in practical terms, unless you're a big setting where you would be able to take some time every week in a set period of time, we're very happy to be flexible and to enable you to meet when it's possible. So long as you're talking about what you're doing, so long as you're talking about the things that you're doing with the children, and perhaps have a discussion about the training sessions that you will undergo, then that's what we're asking. So I'm afraid it's impossible to say how much time, but if somebody's working with you and alongside you at the moment, so long as you can organise to get together, spend some time in the observations and in discussions, then that's what we would ask of a mentor.
That's great. I can see we've got quite a few more questions coming through, so thanks for putting those up into the chat, everyone. I'll work back through. I'll just go through them in order. So if you're ready for a few questions back to back, Gill, the first one I've got is from Suda, who's saying, I work in a school. Will I be able to continue while working?
Yes, when you say continue while working, do you mean continue the programme while you're working in school? Can you just elaborate? Are you working in reception?
So she's saying, yes, so will I be able to work in mainstream schools? Suda, would what I might do is I see if I could allow your mic, if that would make things easier on that one, just because it seems like there might be. I just put nursery from 2017.
Does she mean will she be able to have a job after she's qualified in mainstream school? Is that the question?
So Suda, I'm allowing your mic if you'd like to switch your mic on, by all means, if it's easier to ask Gill the question, to ask the question that way.
I wonder if it is a question about when she has the qualification, can she work in a mainstream school? Perhaps I'll answer that anyway, shall I, Phil?
Yeah, perhaps that might be a good way to catch that question. Yeah.
Yes, she's saying yes, it is. Yes, when you have the qualification e-Qualitas, it does mean that you can work in schools that are academies, because it's their decision as to whether or not they will employ somebody on any basis. They have unqualified teachers sometimes in academies. In mainstream, they would ask to have somebody in a school class, which is reception, and or a nursery that's attached. They ask people to have QTS, as I suspect that you know. However, some schools are quite happy to employ people with e-Qualitas, so long as there is somebody in, say, the early years unit who has got QTS. That's not universal. Schools don't have to do that, but I certainly know that many schools are more than happy to have somebody with e-Qualitas. However, they still need somebody who is supposedly supervising with QTS in order to satisfy the requirements for mainstream schools. Obviously with academies, yes, absolutely fine. Private nurseries, independent schools, all of those settings are perfectly happy and do take people with e-Qualitas. It is an anomaly which started off when the course first became initial teacher training, and it's because the qualification isn't under the teacher's paying conditions, and that's why it means that they do need in school a QTS person who is technically in charge of a class. Not sure if that answers your question.
I think we've got a few more coming through, so we'll work on to the next one, and Suda, by all means, add another query to it if you need to.
Oh, thank you, Suda.
Great, thank you. So I'll move on to the next chat question that we've got, which is from Chris. So welcome, Chris. I believe you've spoken with one or two of my colleagues. So he's saying, is there any provision for networking with other students in our cohort? That's a good question.
Yeah, good question, Chris. Hello, I have spoken to you as well before, so welcome. Yes, absolutely. What we find is that when you have your visiting tutor, the tutor will have a number of trainees who they also visit, and they will run their cohort of trainees by having meetings separate to the training meetings, possibly some mentoring sessions where all the trainees who they are mentoring and they are the visiting tutor for will be able to liaise together and meet. I know that in the past some people have WhatsApp groups for their colleagues so that they can connect, but certainly we're very much aware that you're not meeting face to face, so it is very nice for you to be able to discuss and chat with the people in your cohort. And as I say, because we have our visiting tutors who have up to about 25 trainees together, that they will meet up virtually to discuss things and to get to know each other.
That's great, thank you. And I'll just move on. And Chris, I know you've got one or two questions further down the chat, but we'll move on to the next one from Lixia, who's asking, is this a government funded course, and can you work in mainstream primary school with the qualifications? Can you do it part-time? How long does it take? And what's the difference between this and there's a few parts to it. So if we go through the first part, it's probably easiest, is can you work in mainstream primary schools? Is it government funded?
It is government funded. The course is government funded, and the setting does get the 7,000 incentive in order to support you and to cover supply costs and things when you're on placement. Working in mainstream after you've got your qualification, I don't know if you heard the answer that I gave a little while ago, but you can. But if it's going to be in reception, then they would probably wish in the school, unless it's an academy or an independent school, they would require somebody in the reception class who has QTS. That doesn't stop them also employing you as an EYTS, but they would need somebody as well, or in charge, as it were, who has QTS. What was the next bit, Bill?
The next part is can you do it part-time, and how long will it take?
It starts in September and we get to July when we're having final assessments. So it's a year's course. Technically it's down as a year's course, and it is down as a part-time course actually, because you are working at the same time, and we haven't stipulated how many hours you have to be working in order to be on the course. You have to be employed is the qualification, the eligibility to be on the course. It doesn't say you have to be employed for a certain number of hours, because you will find there are people who are pretty fully much employed who are on the course. And although some providers do have a kind of yardstick as to saying you have to work at least 16 hours, we haven't actually put that down as a stipulation. And what we have done is take it on a one-to-one basis, so that if somebody comes forward and says, this is the way I work and is it okay, then we've worked with you to see whether or not that is, rather than giving a blanket time on which we expect people to be employed. Does that help?
I think we've got a bit of a repeat of the question as well, because I think there's one or two people asking. Sudha's question next after that is, will I be able to work in mainstream schools? And the last question from Lixia as well, which was, what's the difference between early years training and primary teacher training, which I think you've covered a little bit there, Gill.
Right, primary school training is QTS, qualified teacher status, and you can do a course which is 3 to 7 years, so that covers the preschool and it covers reception and year 1. That's a QTS course. That enables you to teach in any school with any age group up to the age of 16. But the EYTS course is actually to provide for early years settings a specialist early years teacher. And so because of the way it was set up, it actually allows people to work from 0 to 5 with early years with a specialism.
So I'll just move through to the next question. So there's another one from Lixia who's asked, I have level 3 early years educator qualification. Can I apply for the course?
No is the short answer to that, Lixia. I'm afraid you do have to have a degree. As it says, a bachelor's degree, any area of study, but I'm afraid it's a bachelor's degree.
So then I'll move on to the next question. We've got quite a few backed up, so just a reminder, everyone, we will get through all the questions that come through, but we'll just move through them in order and put them one at a time to Gill. So I can see Chris has asked another question. Are the online sessions available at different times to fit around shifts?
Yes, actually, Chris, we're going to record it. We're going to record all the training sessions. So somebody who either can't access it at the time we're giving it, or perhaps if you want to repeat or refresh your memory, you'll be able to access it from our online platform and to be able to listen to your training at another time. So the short answer to that, Chris, is yes.
And I think the next question we've got as well is also from Chris, who's asking, in a private early years, does early years ITT count as a qualified teacher for ratios, i.e. 1 to 13?
Chris, that's a question I don't know the answer to. You've absolutely stumped me. I think you need to have a badge for that. I honestly don't know whether that's the case. I think either what we'll need to do is, if we have got your email address, I will try and find that out, because it's not to do with the course or the qualification as such. It's very much to do with what Ofsted will allow in terms of numbers. So I don't have the answer for you, but I hope we can find out and get back to you.
Thanks, Chris, for that question, and yeah, well done for stumping Jill on that one. I'm just, yeah, we can let everyone know the answer after this call. I should mention I'll be following up with an email. I'll send a link through to the slides that I'm sort of just circling through during this call, but also any answers to questions like that I'll be able to send as well in follow up. So I can see that Susan's asked the next question, which is, what is the route to QTS after gaining early years teacher status?
All right, that is a good question, because people do often use the qualification e-Qualitas as a stepping stone, a very valuable stepping stone, I have to say, because the thing that QTS gives you, as we've talked before, is qualified teacher status. But the youngest children that you can teach with QTS in a training situation is 3-year-olds, because there is a course for QTS 3 to 7-year-olds, not babies to 3. So if you use the e-Qualitas qualification as a stepping stone to QTS, you can have your qualification, do your year, qualify, get your e-Qualitas, and then because you will have covered the age group preschool, you can then have a placement in Key Stage 1, that's year 1 and 2. And when you've had your placement and you've developed the evidence that you need to show that you have taught in Key Stage 1, you can put a portfolio together and ask for an assessment only assessment. And assessment only means that you present the evidence and then you are assessed on the evidence. You don't need to go through another course. However, just a proviso there, obviously you will need to have a placement in Key Stage 1. And I suppose if you think about some situations where we have people already working in reception and they've gone through the e-Qualitas, they then would be able, within their own school, to do some work in Key Stage 1 in order to get the second half of their portfolio, and then go for assessment only, which e-Qualitas do. We do the assessment only route for QTS. So yes, it is possible, and it's actually quite a good route for people who want to then extend into perhaps getting a job in reception or even in year 1.
And yet you just beat me to that, Jill, as well. It is something that you can find out more about assessment only on the e-Qualitas website, because it is something we offer as well. So yes, by all means do check that out as well. I'm just looking at the next question as well, which I think is actually relating to something you just mentioned as well about the placement. So I'll read out Bearson's question, which is, I know part of the course is to find a placement in a school. As I work with nursery age children in the private sector, I'm concerned that I would not be able to find a school that would take me on for placement. Do you find this to be common?
I don't think it's common, but it just depends on the circumstances, as you rightly say. Do you have schools that you pass your children on to? Do you feed into any primary schools rather than the independent school? That's really the key to it. If you do feed into any primary schools and your 4-year-olds go to school in a local maintained primary school, then you will find that they are the best people to approach to say you do need a reception placement. If that's not going to be possible, you will be having a visiting tutor, and your tutor will be somebody who is able to work with you and with your setting to find a school that is willing to take you on the placement. It is in the spring term that we recommend it, and it is for 2 separate blocks of 10 days, which are mainly mornings only, to teach phonics and maths. Because you've got plenty of time till the spring term, then you've got some time, even when you start the programme, to find a school that would take you for reception practice. But don't worry about it. We're there. We will help you with that.
And I think that probably answers Suda's question as well, which is next, which is, will you provide placement, or am I able to continue with my present job? So yeah, that is to say that yes, it's an I mean, not to second guess, but as you just mentioned, Jill, placements are something that we can assist with if it is something that is needed.
Yes, yes.
Just looking through to the next question from Chris, which is, how does the specialism work?
In terms of specialism, Chris, the specialism is that you're an early years teacher. This qualification is designed for people who want to specialise in working with children 0 to 5. So the specialism is actually the qualification itself.
Thank you. And I'm just looking through for the next question. We've got a few backed up. We will get through to them all. So I'm just scrolling back through. So we've got yes, Suda's asked also that I recently applied for conversion from India high school B.Ed to PGCE. I'll be able to use early years ITT to secure a job in a mainstream school. I think that's the question we've sort of addressed a bit. So I think the question there is if early years teacher training and PGCE could combine to secure a job in a mainstream school. I'm not sure if that's one that there's a direct answer to that one, Jill.
I'm a bit puzzled by that. We don't offer PGCE, so I'm not quite sure how PGCE would combine with EYTS, certainly not with e-Qualitas. I can't speak for other providers, whether that's something that they do include in their PGCE. Certainly we simply offer the EYTS course as a standalone. It's not part of anything.
And again, yeah, I'd probably sort of revert back to the eligibility criteria slide again. I'll email these to follow up, but I think that's probably the key points. And one thing that I know we can assist with is, and I can see there's a question further down from Suda as well about qualifications. I know that we can assist in some of the equivalency and pointing people towards the equivalency qualifications that they might get if they have international qualifications, for example. So that is something that our enrolment team are able to advise on. So it's possibly one that we could perhaps put them in touch with you, Suda, to talk you through that. And yeah, moving on to the next question, I can see Lixie has asked, I have an overseas degree in nursing and worked as a nurse in the UK for the last 10 years until my child was born. Then I decided to change career to be a teacher. The diploma is in early years as an early years educator level 3. My degree is nursing, so I'm not sure if that counts. I also do teaching outside schools.
Right, okay, your nursing degree, do you know how many CAP points it was? Do you know whether it was 300 or 360 degree CAP points?
I'll just I'll keep an eye if you look out for your answer to that if you happen to know that one, Alexia.
I'll answer it in any case, Phil, perhaps would be a good idea. A bachelor's degree is 360 points, a foundation degree is 300. So if you have a degree that is a bachelor's degree, you automatically have 360. And what we're doing when we do the equivalency is we have a number of tables which tell us which degrees are equivalent to a bachelor's degree. And we would need to, or our recruitment team would need to look up to see what your nursing degree is, whether it is equivalent. So that would be something to check out with our recruitment team.
Thank you. I think there's possibly on that theme as well. I can see a question from Isaac, who says he's an international prospective applicant currently residing in the UK with a diploma in basic education, bachelor's of education, psychology and foundation of education, in science and master of education from all qualifications from Ghana, with 13 years teaching experience, and wants to know if he's eligible to apply for the teaching apprenticeship program. So that's probably a different question for a different team. Isaac, what I might do is, if it's okay with you, I'll pass your details on to our teaching apprenticeship team, because Gill's really she's the head of our early years teacher training. So it's actually different eligibility criteria to what we've got here, but I'll be happy to pass your details on to the team to come back to you about the teaching apprenticeship program, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, if you could, Phil, because as you say, it is a very different set of qualifications, and he will be answered better by the team.
Thanks. I'm just looking through to another question from Chris, who's asked, can you do the baby lesson with a mother and baby group?
It isn't a baby lesson, Chris. It's actually a sequence of learning. And therefore, yes, if you do have a mother and baby group that are visiting the setting perhaps once a week, you can certainly set up your learning sequence with either a baby or several babies, and you would see them week on week. And so you would work with them to advance their learning as you see them next time. So yes, you can. You just have to be absolutely sure that the learning sequence is secure. It's not a one-off lesson.
That's great. And Chris, I can see you put your next question in there. It might have been as we were going through earlier conversation. If you've got I can see it's about early years maths. If you've got a specific question around it, by all means, yeah, it may be that we've gone over it sort of in the conversation as it's gone on, but feel free to put the question on there if there is one specific to that. I'll just move on to the next question from Susan, who's asking about the volume and the nature of the work. How many hours a week is expected, or is it mainly school and assessment work?
How many, what? Sorry, Phil, I didn't quite catch that.
So the question is, how many hours a week is expected, or is it mainly school assessment work?
I think perhaps she means in addition to the normal job. Is that the question?
I think so. It looks, yeah, I think, yeah. Look, I mean, by all means, Susan, feel free to, if you want to add anything to it in the chat. Yeah.
Yeah, she says, yeah. Well, what we expect you to be doing, Susan, is that you're working your normal job. And what we're asking is that you spend some time, you'll have training sessions sort of every 2 to 3 weeks, and that'll be a morning followed by study work that you do afterwards. Now, this might be the same afternoon that you can do that, or it might be that you spend some extra time to do the study work. What we're really asking people to do is to have 90% of a normal teaching timetable, and that's why it's rather difficult to explain how many hours, but your 10% study time is the time when you would do some training and some extra written work. We're really not expecting people to write essays or to spend an enormous amount of time in work such as you would have done for a degree. There will be some times when you do need to do some reflections. You will do your planning in any case, and your visiting tutor, when they visit for their half-day visit, they'll watch you teaching, they will give you some feedback, targets will be set, but an awful lot of the work is within the ordinary day-to-day teaching and working with children that you do normally. I'm afraid I can't give you the number of hours because it does depend a little bit on how quickly you work and the sorts of things you need. I don't think we've said, Phil, it's a personalised programme, which means that to start with, you're given an initial needs assessment, which shows exactly how much of various areas you already have knowledge of. And then the tutor works with you to set targets in those areas that you need support with. So if, for example, you've never been working with babies, then clearly you're going to need to do a placement in babies. if you haven't ever been into a school, when you do go into reception, there's going to be a bit of work to gen up on phonics and maths and the key stage that you're going to be working in, the reception. So it's really how long is a piece of string, but we try very hard not to make you have far too much for you to cope with, as well as your ordinary day-to-day work.
And I think, Susan, looking ahead to your next question on the list, which had possibly been answered, or it looks like it has been answered to an extent there as well, is whether it was more evidence-based work or involving assignment writing. I think it sounds like the answer to that is a bit of both, but it'll depend a little bit. Unless you, Jill could elaborate any further.
Yes, it does actually. It makes a difference on the sort of areas that you know very well already. So let's take, for example, if you have a great deal of knowledge on special needs, then you will need to do less reading around the subject of the different types of special needs than if you work all the time with children who have special needs. The same is true with any age group. So if you haven't ever been into toddlers, then you'll need to look at things that are very symptomatic of toddlers. You'll need to do some background reading. So it does depend a little bit on what you come with. And then as you progress through the course, making sure that you do meet all the standards for early years, and also our ITT curriculum, which I think Phil was actually throwing up on one of the screens a little while ago. We've got, that's it, yes. That's our curriculum. It's divided into 11 different sections. You can see the tiles there, and all those areas are covered in the course in one way or another. So you can see there, I talked about special needs. There we've got special needs and disabilities. So during the course, we have a training on special needs, and clearly you will have children in your settings who have special needs. And we do ask you to write what we're calling a learning sequence with children with special needs, and that will be working with them, either one child on their own or perhaps a couple, and you'll be putting some activities for them together, and then you will obviously teach them, you'll assess, you'll move them forward, and all the background information you need about early years special needs children will be part of that learning sequence. So we fit very much around these tiles, as we call them, to get everything covered.
And I think it probably goes back to a bit on eligibility. I can see Burson's asked, do we need to do an English and maths assessment to be taken on the course? And I think this also relates, I'm just going to skip ahead to a question I can see from actually that's just come up from FS listed on as the name as, I'm surprised I have 2 degrees and 22 years experience in EYFS. I'm surprised I still require the GCSEs. I think that's probably one for our enrolment team who might be able to sort of guide you a bit more on doing equivalency exams that might help with the eligibility. I'm not sure if there's anything else you'd want to add to that, Jill, as well.
Yes, and people actually have said this to me many times, and I can see why the question arises. It's a qualification that we're asking for, not specifically for early years, but for any initial teacher training programme. You do need the English and Maths GCSE. That's it. There's no way around it. The only way that you can show that you have the equivalency is to take what's called an equivalency test, and the enrolment and recruitment team can point you in that direction, so that you can then take a test which is set by equivalency boards, and then when it's marked, then you are deemed equivalent to GCSE English and Maths. And I'm afraid there isn't a way around it. We're not a university, so we can't credit prior learning, and therefore we do need, and we have to have, either the GCSE Maths and English 4 or above, or a C if it's old style, or equivalency tests.
I can see just, and while we're on that, I can see the question that just came up about that as well. Again, attending then FS, the concern about equivalency testing. Will you be able to complete it before the start of the programme for all 3, maths, English and biology? I think I'll go back to the I would say there that it is possible to do it. It's again, it's one that our enrolment team would be able to send you the details of, and they'd be able to talk you through what it costs and send you the links for where you'd need to do it. But I know that, yeah, we certainly do work with trainees who enroll and do need to do this before the September start. So it's possible is one that I could answer. My colleagues Charlotte and Victoria are probably best equipped to answer that. By all means, if you want, I'll put up some email addresses at the end, because I don't know if I can see your contact details, or I'll be sending an email following this call. So by all means, do get back to us by reply if you want some more info from Charlotte and Victoria on that. Anna, I can see that you asked about the slides from this presentation. Yeah, I'll be sending those around in the email that I follow up with tomorrow. So yeah, that's I'll send a link where you can download these slides from. Looking at Anna's next question, are trainees expected to observe teaching and learning? We have a 2 to 3 year PVI plus 3 to 4 years in maintained nursery school.
Yes, when you say you're expected to observe it, yes, because you'll be working within that situation. If you go to reception, then you'll spend the first 5 days observing the teacher teaching, and then you'll put together your learning sequence. I'm not quite sure exactly on the background to that question, but yes, you will be expected to observe, but also you will be observed doing the teaching as well.
Rather keeping an eye on the chat, because I can see we've got a couple of questions kind of following up. Thanks for sending your email address there. So just having a look, I think Anna's just typing something in follow-up to that question. I'll quickly skim through a couple of the quick ones here. So there's 2 questions from Suda, which is, first one is, what's the awarding body of the course, and how much is the salary during the course time? Or how does it impact on salary in your role?
Oh, right. The salary is down to your employer, and that obviously would be the setting or the school where you're employed. So whatever your salary is, then that's their decision. One addition to that, we do give the £7,000 as an incentive to the setting, and if they decided to use some of that to enhance your salary, that would be totally down to them, because it's their decision how to use that 7,000 to support you on the programme. And if that's something that they agree to do, that's totally their prerogative. Was there another part to that question as well, Phil?
The first part of it was, what's the awarding body of the course?
Oh yes, it's the government, it's the DFE.
So yeah, that's and again, that's where the incentive and the DFE fundings come from as well. So yeah, it's all part of the same process. So got a question from Lixia, who's asking, is that her degree is the same as UK honours degree? The confirmation from getting into the confirmation from DFE overseas. I mean, it sounds, I know that these are the kind of questions that, again, my colleagues in the enrolment team are helping people to find the answer to, and they will have that. So again, if we've got your email address from registration, Lixia, I'll be happy to pass your details on to Charlotte and Victoria, and I'm sure they'll be able to steer you in the right direction on that one. I hope that helps. And equally, again, I'm not sure, Gill, if it's one that you'd be aware of. It might be one for Charlotte and Victoria, about whether the Chinese qualifications that are equivalent to GCSEs would need to be, whether there'd be any additional needed for eligibility. Personally, I'd be stumped by that one. I'd have to revert to Victoria and Charlotte, but I'm sure they've answered that before.
The equivalency information gives the recruitment team all the different types of qualifications that there are. They are aware of how to follow up. Used to be called NARIC. I can't remember the name of the body now that supplies that information. Sometimes it requires a little bit of digging, but there is a body that does give the equivalents to all sorts of qualifications throughout the world. So yes,
I believe that's ENIC, isn't it?
Sorry?
I think it's ENIC, if I remember rightly.
Yes, that's it. Yes, it used to be called NARIC, and now it's ENIC. You're quite right. But yes, that's their job. That's what they do. And certainly Victoria, Charlotte and James have access to that body of information. So they'll be able to help you.
So I hope, Isaac, that's in a roundabout way, sort of answered your question as well. I can see you've asked a similar question there. Like I say, it's something that I'm sure my colleagues will be able to steer you towards the answer on that one. So we'll certainly be happy to forward your details to them. Just looking at Susan's next question, do you recommend that the 10% release time is set for early years teacher training work only, or as part of the school PPA?
That is a good question, but actually it is supposed to be your study time, and therefore if you are already involved in school PPA, then that's the school's requirement. But our requirement is that you have your own 10% study time, which is in addition to a school's PPA. We're not expecting you to count the school's PPA time as your training time. You should have both.
So I'm just having a look onto the next question as well, because it looks, I know we answered Anna's question earlier. So she was mentioning about her colleague who is based in the PVI, so
Yes.
working exclusively with 2 to 3s. She's the highest qualified member of the PVI. So would she need to observe teachers in the nursery school as well?
Is this a colleague that's in the PVI?
That's, yeah, I believe it's to do with the question earlier about observing teaching. So it's for that colleague who would be observing, who I suppose colleagues who are perhaps more or less qualified members of the team in the PVI.
Yes, when you have a mentor, the mentor who is allocated to you to support you is usually a colleague. And if you're used to doing pair observation or peer observation, then it's that kind of observation that we're talking about. Don't forget, you will also have a visiting tutor who'll be able to observe you, but there's no reason at all why somebody who is your colleague, who is your mentor, dependent on the role rather than their qualification, then they certainly would be able to observe you teaching and to work with you to decide on where to improve and what went well.
Thanks. I've just seen we've got Govinda, who's joined the chat in the last few minutes, as well as raised a hand. If you've got a question, I should have probably mentioned a few times as we've gone on, as we've had a few people join. By all means, just put your question into the chat, and we can answer them as we go. So yeah, don't feel free to just write your question in there, and we'll answer it when we get to it. So I think we're almost caught up. I can see a question from Sudha, who's asked, my head teacher is very supportive, but she has no idea about the course. Would you be able to contact her so that I can continue my course while working as a TA? I mean, potentially, Sudha, by all means, if you wanted to get in touch, I'll show the email address. We've got some contact details here. So we've got our early years at e-Qualitas, or if you're already in touch with my colleagues Victoria and Charlotte, I'm sure they'd be happy to have a conversation with you or with your head teacher to perhaps talk through what the they'd be happy to set up a meeting. They have a call booking system on the website, so I'm sure they'd be happy to speak with you and your head teacher at the same time, perhaps to discuss the course itself.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea, Phil, because you rightly say not everybody has heard of the course, even though it's been going for a long time. And in order for a school or setting to understand exactly what it means for them as a setting and to support you, it's a good idea for them to book the call and to talk to either Victoria or Charlotte, and then they can explain exactly what the role of the school should be during the course.
And I'd follow that up with if you are speaking with your head teacher, for example, Sudha, there's the website link that's on the screen at the moment. There's a calendar booking link there that will allow, you'll see the calendar of when my colleagues are available to speak. So if you sent that to your head teacher, I'm sure they'd be able to pick a time when they can speak with Charlotte and Victoria and get any questions they have answered about it. So I think we're just about caught up. I hope I haven't missed anyone's questions. I'll just have a quick scroll back through. But if anyone thinks of anything in the next minute or two, we'll stick around to answer anything. But hopefully we've got through everything by the looks of it and give everyone as much information as they needed so far. Oh, sorry, the link is on the screen. So it's literally, it's the e-Qualitas further info available at, so it's probably not linked because I'm just presenting, but it's literally on the website when you go to early years. So there's a link on the homepage. I can certainly send it through. It'll be in the next email. Govinda, yeah, by all means, Govinda, feel free to put a question. I'm sure we're not shooting off straight away. Thanks, Sudha.
No, please do ask. If you've got something to ask, please do.
Yeah, we'll stick around for another couple of minutes, Govinda. If you wanted to put your question into the chat, we'll get back to you straight away. Thanks, Chris. Oh, thanks, Isaac.
I'm glad it's been helpful to the people who have dropped in to see us today.
I'm just seeing there's a question. Does this course credit for masters? Not sure. Does it? I don't know if we might need to elaborate on that question, Lexia, if you don't mind.
There is. I think I understand what that is. If you're going for a master's degree, then sometimes the university who run the master's degree, it's always universities, can accredit prior learning. And what they do then is they have a look at your qualifications, which might include the EYT as well. And it really is down to each university to decide whether or not they will accredit what you've come with points towards a master's. But it is an individual decision from a university. So you might go to a university and they might say they'll accredit you some for the EYTS and some might not. It just depends. You would need to approach a university to ask them.
Thanks. I'll just get to Govinda's question, which has just come through as well, which is that I'm an early years teacher assistant through an agency. I want to gain early years teacher status. Can you please advise me to proceed to it?
Right. So does that mean that you don't currently have a employed position in a setting? I guess from what you're saying that perhaps you don't. Can I just check with that one, Phil? Do you think we can ask? Or did you gain from that information that perhaps was it supply teaching or?
Yeah, it's teaching assistant through an agency. So I mean, I would think in that scenario, because I would say, assuming through an agency, I know we're sort of primarily working in employment-based teacher training, so it's working with employers. Although I believe we're working with one or two settings that are actually looking for to take on trainees to do the early years teacher training as well.
We are, so it might be an idea if you could get the details. Was it Govinda who can't remember who was asking the question?
That's right, yeah.
Take some details because it might be worth looking at to see where in the country they're working. Particular nurseries in different areas of the country are looking for people to work with them. So it's possible at some point, if we have the details, that there might be a setting that we come across that needs somebody to be employed. So it's certainly worth sending us in your details and possibly a CV so that we can perhaps do a match.
Yeah, it's definitely something I know. I've spoken with Charlotte and Victoria recently. I know they've been working with nurseries that are seeking people to work in their team and do the training. So it's yeah, Govinda, if you wanted to send an email to the address on the screen, by all means do. I think, as I say, I'm following up an email tomorrow, so by all means let us know by reply if it's something we can help with. Can I check with you at the end of the program, do we achieve a degree? So that's a question from FS on there as well, Gill.
Yes, it's not a degree. It's a qualification in early years teacher training, and it's a qualification that's awarded by the government, and it's regarded as a postgraduate qualification.
And then Lix has just asked, supply teacher experience, will it count as unqualified teacher for future assessment routes? Only teacher training, again, QTS, 2 years in 2 schools. So yeah, it sounds like you've referring to the eligibility on for assessment only on our website. I know 2 years in 2 across 2 schools is part of the eligibility. I don't know if that's one. It might be a question for Helen, our assessment only director, on that one, just exactly how the experience eligibility is for that. I'm not sure unless it's one you'd like to answer, Jill.
I think, frankly, Phil, it would be better if Helen could answer it, because it's quite specific, and I don't want to give information that perhaps would be misleading.
No, I thought that might be the case. I could certainly pass that question on to Helen Gregory, our director of assessment only, and we can come back to you on that one. Thank you. I think that's probably all. I mean, if you think of another question, I think we'll probably wrap things up there, because I think we've just about got through answering every question we had. So thanks for joining us, everybody. One thing I would say is, if you do think of anything that you haven't had a chance to ask us, or you think of something after you go away, by all means give us an email to the address on the screen, or by reply to one of the emails you've had this week. And I'll follow up. You'll get an email from me in the morning just to send you this this slide deck from this presentation. And yeah, by all means, feel free to get back to us or book a call with our team to go through early years teacher training in more detail.
Yes, thank you very much. It's been really nice to meet people and to hear the different questions, because this programme is a fantastic programme. It works extremely well for people. They really do find it's a lovely stepping stone to future positions. It is one where you show that you lead practice, and when you go through the programme and end up at the other side of it, you'll find that it's very useful as a gate opener for all sorts of different positions in different settings with young children.
Thanks, everyone. Just seeing all the comments coming in. Thanks very much for joining us, and I'll end the meeting there. And as I say, I'll send an email, and yeah, we'll be in touch tomorrow. So thanks for joining us. Thank you. Take care.
Thank you. Goodbye to everybody.